Barcelona with a massive win over Real Madrid. They now only need 2 points from the remaining 3 games or one more win and the title is theirs. It was one of the more memorable Clásicos that we've seen in recent history. So to do it justice, let's bring you the best of today's analysis from the boys in Barcelona.
It is very much a celebratory mood, as you can expect, as Barca all but sealed the deal with that extraordinary, I've used the word extraordinary a lot, 4-3 win over Real Madrid. Lewis and Craig alongside me. You take a look at the standings, obviously. Barcelona have the initiative, 7 points cleared, 3 games to play. It's 8 points because, remember, it's head-to-head and not goal difference in La Liga. So a point will be enough in those 3 matches.
Yeah, and I think when they do win the title, and they will, the best, most entertaining, most organised team with a plan. They've had a plan this season. Whether we sit in Bristol, Connecticut on a weekly basis and talk about their high line and talk about their inexperience and talk about, why are they squeezing the game at this point and all that sort of stuff. They've had a plan, and this is the way they're going to play, and it did cost them to an extent in the Champions League, but it's not going to cost them in La Liga. But there's a pattern of play how they go about it, and I thought that was amplified today by the performance of the 2 guys that have driven this team forward in the middle of the park. I thought Pedri and Frankie de Jong, for all the talk about Lamine Yamal and Rafinha and the goals and all that, the middle of the park today was super important. That's why at half-time, Diaz and Modric come on. They needed somebody, Real Madrid, that could put the foot in the ball.
I'm really happy because after a 2-0 behind, it's not easy. And also about having the match in the legs from Tuesday, not easy, but the mentality is really unbelievable. They never give up. They have the mentality about this, and it's good to see this.
Hansi Flick seems to have given his team that confidence, that belief in themselves that no matter what is happening, you could be 2-0 down, yet you still can come back. You still have the ability. Yeah. You've still got to stick to your gun.
Listen, they've got a wonderful forward line, haven't they? Defensively, they're not very good. And defensively, that has to change because they will not win the Champions League playing like that. Listen, we love watching them. It's amazing. The forward line.
They almost won it, Mac.
No, but they did. No, almost. There's no almost.
92nd minute, they almost did it against Inter.
And they should have shut up shop. They got knocked out in the semi-finals.
I know, but we're talking as if, they're never going to do it. They're never going to get close.
They're not.
I don't understand. I don't understand what the problem is.
The problem
when you're
is
just 2 minutes away.
When you're conceding 3 goals every game, right, and the better teams will shut up shop and grind out results. They can't grind out anything, Barcelona. They just want to outscore you. Listen, it's brilliant on the eye. I love watching them. I'd come and watch them every single week, the way they play. I think the 3 up front, or the 4 up front with Ferran and Lewandowski, Pedri behind, you've got Gavi, you've got Firmino to come on. I think it's exceptional, but they have to do something differently defensively if they're going to be crowned and the very, very best, and they're going to have to do it every single year.
We know how to play. At the end we need to control a little bit more the first minutes because in the last game we conceded a lot of goals, but at the end we know we're going to come back. So
this is what amazed me is that I mean you're not afraid of receiving goals because you know that somehow with the football you have, with the strikers you have, with the quality you have, it's not a problem.
Yeah, we know our power in offense, but sometimes we need to control more this situation because we cannot concede every game first goal, 2 goals or whatever. We have to keep working a lot on that, but at the end, very happy for the win. It was really important.
Every time a team ran forward, you thought, they're going to score, and it just kept on. The goals just kept on coming. I was only surprised we only had 1 in the second half. We could have easily had 5. Rafinha could have had 5 alone.
I know. How can you go 2-0 up and then you're absolutely hanging on at half-time?
I know. They just down tools at half-time.
You must be the same as us. We're like, what's the score?
What's happened? I know. It was just surreal watching Real Madrid collapse in the first half.
But I tell you, if half-time Hunter came around, we wouldn't have had a spectacle.
No.
If we'd had another 10 minutes or 15 minutes of that incessant Barcelona pressure, he needed half-time to be able to make a couple of changes.
Yeah. I think it was a street football. We saw 2 teams just going forward and forgetting that sometimes you have to defend in football. And for Barcelona, it would have been a massive blow to draw this game or even lose it because they had or they gave option to Real Madrid when you have everything in hand. It's true that Real Madrid started very good in the first 45, But when when Barcelona started having the ball, dominating, creating chances, it could have been 4, 5, 6 goals in the first 45.
What we saw today was a portrait of this season. Of one team that knows what it wants, that goes for it, that takes the risk, that creates chances, that makes things happen, and another team that doesn't feel, that still makes things happen because it's got 2 or 3 really, really good players. Still can go into space and score goals, but you don't feel like there's an identity, a structure. I don't know about you, but in the first half, there was probably a 15 or 20 minute period in the first half where it seemed to me that Real Madrid's plan, in so much as there was a plan, or Real Madrid's reaction was, look, when it comes to you, just kick it as far away as you possibly can. Because they were so overwhelmed by Barcelona that they were just kicking it. And if they couldn't kick the ball, they would kick Barcelona's players. Anything to just try and stop this storm that they couldn't deal with. And I thought that until the second half, when obviously we saw the change at half-time with Modric and Brahim and so on, until the second half, that first 45 minutes, Madrid had no midfield.
El año pasado sí que es verdad que no les pudimos ganar y sufren mucho. Al final que te gane el Madrid no es plato de buen gusto. El año pasado lo sufrimos y este año sí que es verdad que jugamos con todo, no tenemos ese miedo que a lo mejor tienen otros equipos contra ellos. Entonces lo damos todo, nos sentimos superiores a todos los equipos porque yo creo que hay que salir con esa mentalidad. Yo creo que es jugar así, contra ellos es jugar así, jugar como pensando que eres mejor que ellos y ya está, y disfrutar.
They didn't know what to do, they didn't know what position to pick up. They were constantly torn inside out by Rafinha and people running past, even the left back got forward on many occasions. So the changes had to be made. But they played very much off the cuff from Madrid in the first half. It was just waiting and let's hope that something happens and let's hope that Kylian gets forward or Vinicius does something exceptional. There was no real plan. And if Xabi Alonso does come in, he certainly has a plan. He certainly has a way of building up from the back through the pitch and going forward.
If he arrives, will he have the enough players or the players to play that kind of system?
Will he have the power, Luis? That's the big thing. Will he have the power from up top to let him do exactly what he wants to do? That'll be the bigger question for me.
I think we need to touch on Bellingham again. Did you think he was good today?
I thought Real Madrid really struggled. So all of them struggled. I don't think he was particularly bad or worse than other players. I just don't think he got into the game as much as he wanted to.
How many times did we see, seriously, and all the chances they created, how many times can you remember Jude Bellingham
near the box?
Near the box.
You can see that he's frustrated. You can see by his runs, by his movement, his body language, he's frustrated because he's looking around. He's saying, "I'm running, I'm tackling, I'm fighting." He had a couple of fights into the pitch with Pedri, and it's not the first time because he can see in front of him a fantastic player that is surrounded by a fantastic player, and all of them are giving something, and he feels that he's not receiving that. So I'm sure that all of them are going to be open to whatever. If it's Xavi, the manager, looks like he's going to be like this. What is going to bring on the table? What is the tactics? How are we going to have the patterns? How is going to be the system? Are we going to work with the 2 players up front, or are you thinking about bringing something different? So I'm sure, because this season didn't work.
The repetitiveness, the relentlessness, and frankly the cruelness with which opponents look for the space behind Lucas Vazquez all season. Now, Lucas isn't a right back, although he has been for the last few seasons a right back.
Yeah.
And it felt like every time Barca took a step forward, Madrid were thinking, there's nothing we can do.
I mean, why didn't they do something about that in January? I mean, this isn't being wise after the event. I think we were all saying in January, they can't do that with half a season, the business end of the season to go. Danny Carvajal's out for the season. They've got to get someone in. Well, I don't know. You'd know better than me. So did they try to get Kyle Walker? I think there was talk of that, wasn't there?
There was a suggestion that Kyle Walker might be available, but they of course, at this point, when they're contemplating the move for Trent Alexander-Arnold, when they're thinking, well, don't add another right back. And the other thing that's worth putting this into context, and the context is last season. Where last season in the winter window, there was a sense that actually you could do with a couple of players just to kind of protect yourself, and they didn't do it, and they won everything. And you got players like Joselu playing a key role in that. You had a season in which Lunin played the entire season in the Champions League until the final, pretty much. Yeah. And so you have this situation in which I guess you think, well, we've got the players. We don't want to do it. And Madrid are very, very reluctant. I know this doesn't
Is that a bit of complacency and arrogance on their part? Like, because everyone else was telling them, oh, they always get it done, Real Madrid, but they didn't.
I think what happens in part is that they get shaken out of their complacency by the fact that it doesn't work this year. But last year, maybe there's a bit of that. It's also about structure and planning, which is that you don't want to spend money that you don't need to spend. And I know it looks like Real Madrid can spend money on whatever they want, but the reality is they can't. And the reality is they don't want to put money behind signings that they don't think are worthwhile.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our marathon broadcast here at Montjuic. It has quite literally been a classic Clasico. Barcelona winning by 4 goals to 3.
Sum up the season in one word for us.
Spectacular.
Sid was just asking about the performance from our boys in Barcelona, and that's what Hansi Flick had to say. Spectacular. Yes, here we go. More La Liga still to come. Midweek action as Barcelona can secure La Liga's title. It is against Espanyol, though, that they will have to do so. Their city rivals, Real Madrid, will be in action the day before against Mallorca. Full slate of action coming up midweek in La Liga. And they managed to come back to salvage a point. They host Newcastle next week with 2 points between the two. This is how the table is shaping up as it stands. Frank Leboeuf was watching it for us as well. Initial reaction to what we saw today in this game, Frank?
Well, for me, that game is exactly the picture of the season we have in the Premier League. Inconsistency. That's what I saw. Great first half from the Reds, then suddenly they left the pitch. And Arsenal were already on holidays for the first half, came back into football and showed their strength. But never we had a fight. Never I found something like a real game between the first and the second. For me, it was weaknesses for some and strengths for the others, but not and didn't see the real confrontation. That I was expecting. So overall, a nice game to watch, but not what I was really looking forward to watching.
I tell you what we weren't expecting, because we asked you about this just the other day, the reception that we were going to see Trent Alexander-Arnold get. Well, there were boos today as he came on.
I'll be honest, I actually almost rewound my screen because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I was absolutely disgusted. I did not think, I didn't think that was what Liverpool fans were like. I didn't think that's what Liverpool's history was about. Everybody who returns to Anfield or who has played for Liverpool should never, in my opinion, ever be booed. And I would love to say that it was the usual small minority, but unfortunately it wasn't. There was too many of them. It almost seemed 50-50. There was half of them clapping and half of them booing. So I don't quite have the vocabulary without saying the wrong types of words to tell you how disgusted I was at the people that were booing him. This guy's given every single thing for Liverpool on and off the field. And because he decides that he's going to try something else, that doesn't give you the right to boo him. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I was absolutely disgusted. And you know what? I was talking last week about Real Madrid, how I thought it was classless what they were doing. Well, this was absolutely classless, of the highest order. And I did not expect it from Liverpool fans. I'm shocked and disgusted, quite frankly.
We had to check a few times ourselves, didn't we, Checker, and look back over some videos to see it was booing, and we're shocked ourselves when we saw it.
Very much so. And while I share Stevie's disgust, I never played for Liverpool, but I felt that Liverpool as a football club and their fan base held themselves to a higher standard. Not what everybody else did, but they held themselves to a higher standard. From a player's perspective, here's why players always say that there's absolutely no loyalty in the game. Now, if 10 years, 15 years ago, whatever it is, as Trent Alexander-Arnold is making his way up in the Liverpool academy, you say to Liverpool fans, this young lad will be a part of 2 title-winning teams, your first 2 titles in 30 years. He'll win Champions Leagues, but he'll move on at a free transfer when the time comes and he decides that it's right for him. Are you, as fans, okay with that? To a person, they would have said yes. Nobody would have had any issue with a player coming through the academy, returning Liverpool to their glory days, and then stepping away because he wanted to try something different. Yet we sit here and 10 or 15 years later, however we want to frame this, and have to witness Liverpool Football Club booing one of their own, who's been a part of their greatest story, certainly of the last 3 decades. That, for me, I don't think, I don't see how you excuse, how you accept, how you're a part of, quite frankly. And so similarly, as we heard from Steve, we hear from so many of ex-Liverpool players, surprised, a little bit disgusted.
I think the good thing that might end up happening here, and I certainly hope it does, is that there's another home game to come. Liverpool have another home game, which will be Trent Alexander's last game at Anfield. And he will play. Arne Slot would be wrong not to play him. He should play him. And I'm hoping that between now and that game, that the local newspapers, the local media, all get behind Trent Alexander-Arnold and tell all these people that were burned, if you're going to do that again, please don't turn up. Give somebody your ticket who's actually going to applaud and give Trent Alexander-Arnold the reception that he deserves for what he's done for this football club. So I'm hoping that's what will happen.
Well, time will tell. And we'll be here for it,
Yeah, but
of course.
I'm sorry, if I may say, you know, Stevie, if they change their mind within 2 weeks by starting by booing him today and encouraging him for his last game, they are worse than I think. Because, I mean, you have to, in that matter, if you are stupid, be stubborn and stupid. Because those people, they should have no respect from the others. They've been disrespectful to football overall, to a football club. As Shaka said, I thought fans of Liverpool were different than some others. You know, because of the history, because of, I don't know, it's a real football club. And everybody think that and that's very strange for me. That was disrespectful, disgusting, and those people shouldn't be on the stand of any football club anymore because they don't understand football. They don't know what serving means. We are against mercenaries, and Trent Alexander-Arnold was everything but a mercenary. He showed loyalty to the club, and he's been booed by half of the stand. Awful, disrespectful, disgusting.
Oh, Newcastle with a 2-0 win here. Frank, obviously you were keeping your eye on this one. Newcastle rising to the big occasion. Chelsea getting a man sent off. Their disciplinary record not looking good this season.
No, not looking good, but nothing to say about that. And that was a deserving red card. But I think if it works last week with Caicedo on the right side, I think the tactic today from Maresca wasn't a good one. And it's been showed and proved in the second half when Caicedo joined Fernandes and Lavia in the middle of the park. And Chelsea, even 10 against 11, have been better than, than Newcastle. And therefore, you can say that the first half, when they didn't play, even at 11 against 11 for 30 minutes, they barely showed anything. They tried to keep the ball, but they had no chances. But it's when second half, Maresca changed something that we didn't see Newcastle anymore. I was worried about, I said, what's wrong with Newcastle? Physically, they went down, they couldn't react. And I think they didn't overall deserve to win. Because what I saw from Chelsea in the second half proved that Chelsea could have done better and should have scored goals. And it could have been a 1-1. Nothing to say about that. So they missed the chance, mostly because of a tactic which worked against Liverpool at home, but didn't work against Newcastle.
Shaka, Newcastle did make hard work of seeing out that win in the second half.
They did. Got the start that they wanted, the early Tonali goal. The crowd were up for it, and talking about this game yesterday, we felt that the St. James's Park crowd would play a part, and that's certainly how it seemed, at the very least in the first half. But then, even with the 10 men, and Frank's right, Chelsea were far better than Newcastle in the second half. Far better. And even before we get into the second half, after the Tonali goal, I can't really remember Sanchez making a save. Newcastle were the better of the two teams, but I don't remember Sanchez doing anything at all. The highlight would stand that up. From then on in, I thought Chelsea were easily the better of the two teams, even with the 10 men. You saw Nick Pope and the role that he had to play, and you just wondered. And here's the concern for me. Even during this first half, even when Newcastle were on top and playing the better football, you saw absolutely nothing of Alexander Isak. And that, for me, that almost stood out, how absent he was. And I'm not questioning Isak, his talent, his importance to this team. I see that more in praise of Chelsea, their defensive organisation, Maresca's game plan, because they simply nullified Newcastle's attack in that regard. And but for that early kidney punch from Sandro Tonali, we could be having a very different conversation here. To credit to Chelsea, they head back south, kind of wondering how they leave St. James's Park with nothing. Because for much of it, I think they were better. At the absolute least, deserved a point.
Could Isak have done more, Stevie?
I don't think so. No.
I think Chelsea and Maresca set up well. I say that in praise of Chelsea and Maresca, as opposed to a criticism of Isak.
Yeah, but like all centre forwards, if you don't get him the ball, then how's he supposed to do anything in the game? And they didn't do it. They've in the last 2 or 3 games, they've almost become a team that just want to not lose anything. Newcastle, and completely and totally, seemingly are relying on counter-attacking. Even before the red card for Jackson, they were just, it was really a load of counter-attacking at home with that crowd behind you. And if you're going to do that and you're going to isolate Isak up front, then that's why you don't see him doing anything.
What did you make of all of this, Stevie? Because the initial thought was obviously there was that miscommunication and the mix-up at the end, but then it felt as though frustrations were boiling over because of the battle that we're seeing for European football here and because of conceding late on from Forest to a relegated team.
Right. Well, I think miscommunication is the wrong word. There's no question that the physio gave the thumbs up, and I don't care what part of the planet you're from. If somebody does that, that's good. So there's not really a miscommunication. You've got somebody who's not done his job properly, and that's the physio. The bottom line is the physio's job in that situation is to figure out whether the guy can play on or not. Not ask him if he's okay or what would you like to do. You do certain tests, whatever it may be, to where the injury is to figure out where, in your professional opinion, whether the player should carry on or not. And he obviously didn't do his job properly. And that's the bare bones of it. And the accountability on him will come. In terms of the owner coming on the field, it's every single manager, coaches. It's just a nightmare. When you've got a guy, and don't think this is just a one-off, because behind the scenes, he's in his ear, asking why he's doing this, what are you doing this for, sticking his nose in where it doesn't. Listen, if he's got a big ship in the middle of the ocean, a shipping container, then you know what? Absolutely get involved, because that's what he knows. But don't go on a football field and start sticking your nose in and try and go to a guy in Nuno who's got you from relegation candidates to possible Champions League candidates and start questioning them. It's every manager's nightmare that you get an owner or a chairman or whoever it is who sticks the beak in where it doesn't need to be. And I'm not saying that as an owner or a chairman or whatever it is, you don't ask questions, but you don't run on the field and start doing that right there and then. Just an absolute no-no.
Well, there's a time and a place, right, Shaka?
Absolutely. All owners ask questions of their managers. Stevie knows that. But there's a place for that. There's a boardroom for that, or wherever it may be. There's a time for that, whether it's right after the game, the afternoon after the game, whether it's the Monday, whatever it may be. It's not on the pitch, on the final whistle. And I think what that does is it really strips Nuno Espirito Santo of any kind of gravitas, of his authority on the field. And that, for me, I think can be critical in terms of Forest, what happens for the rest of the season. Because if all of a sudden him doing that has the players questioning Nuno's authority within the club setup, then you're already on a slippery slope. More to the point, Nottingham Forest still have an awful lot to play for here. Nottingham Forest have to go to West Ham next. And then the final game of the season is right back there against Chelsea for all the marbles. And now you have a manager who's been kind of publicly dragged in this way. And I know it's a physio who's at fault, but the physio is part of that backroom staff that the manager oversees. So the owner coming on to the park and even remonstrating with the physio, or to what we just saw with the manager as he did, I think just kind of stripped some of all of their authority and it negatively impacts that dressing room and negatively impacts what's to come in the next 2 weeks.
And obviously it is, as Shaka mentioned, very tight and very tense in those final stages. So you know where we are now, Frank. We're here to talk about the top 5 races. We do so often these days on this show. What are your thoughts on how it's going to finish now with what you've seen today?
Well, you have to look at the schedule. And if we start with Newcastle, they will have to play at the Emirates against Arsenal. And Arsenal is going to play the last game. They have to play at home, so they want to win. And Newcastle, the last time they came to the Emirates, they won. I think it was a cup game. And they want to show to their fans that they have pride. So I don't see Newcastle winning that game. I expect Chelsea to win against Manchester United, according to the performances that I saw from those two teams today. And it's going to be a fight between Nottingham and Chelsea after. I don't forget Aston Villa. I think the villains can be part of the battle, and I see them coming into the first 5 spots. And I'm sorry for Xhaka, the mayor of Newcastle. I want to believe that Chelsea is going to do better than Newcastle the last 2 games, because according to what I saw today, I think Newcastle is getting tired. So I go for the 3 at front, which are Liverpool, Arsenal, and Manchester City, and I will add Aston Villa and Chelsea.
It is that last game, Nottingham Forest against Chelsea as well. That is tense.
To Frank's point, and I get it, I think the top 4 as is right now stays our top 4. While yes, Newcastle does have to go down to Arsenal, they then finish off the season at home to Everton. Everton, their season's over. Listen, I've been there when you've kind of been in a relegation dogfight and you drag yourself out of it. That last game of the season is one that you just want over with. So I think it's as good a time for a team like Newcastle to be playing with all at stake for them to be playing a team like Everton with nothing at stake. So I think that top 4 stays. It then comes down to 1 from 3. Nottingham Forest and Chelsea playing last game of the season, as I mentioned. Aston Villa have won 7 of their last 8 league games. They only lost 2-1 to Manchester City in that 8. Aston Villa now have to go away to Spurs right before the Europa League final, and then they close out at home to Manchester United right after the Europa League final. And you just wonder how both those teams, and you saw how both those teams performed today, how both those teams, with their entire season at stake, on that Europa League final, what are Spurs going to be like going into it? If whatever comes of it, whether Manchester United wins or loses, what are they going to be like coming out of it? And again, if you're Aston Villa, while on paper that might seem the most difficult of the run-ins, that's a perfect time to be playing both those clubs. So now all of a sudden you really have this Chelsea-Nottingham Forest game with all the marbles at stake. I am leaning Chelsea. Because I think, despite the loss today, I thought they were really good. So they get the result that they need against Nottingham Forest. They do that, regardless of what Aston Villa does. Chelsea gets into the top 5.
Chelsea have lost 6 of their last 9 away, and only Leicester and Southampton have a worst record in that period.
Yep.
That's not helping them.
No. In fact, Chelsea Forest might mean nothing. Aston Villa are going to win the last 2 games.
I think so too.
Aston Villa are going to win the last 2 games. And if Aston Villa, and unless Chelsea win the last 2 games, then they're not going to qualify. And I don't think they will. So I absolutely think Aston Villa are going to join what is the top 4 right now and get that 5th spot.
Spurs, that's their 20th league defeat of the season. This is the bottom of the Premier League table right now. West Ham's win moved them up to 15th. United dropped to 16th in the table. Spurs dropped to 17th. And that's how things are looking as it stands right now, Stevie.
What were the odds?
The Europa League finalists, just above.
Just avoid relegation. I mean, can you imagine what the odds would have been at the start of the season?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, it just shows you how low these 2 teams are. And I'm sorry, it's just got to tell you what the Europa League is like. Because when those 2 sides get to the final, that tells you that the competition is not much of a competition.
Frank, does it matter that they keep losing in the league now that they've made the Europa League final?
Of course it does. It makes the final being... well, what adjective I can use for that, you know? Useless to watch. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not interested at all about that final, Europa League final. We are talking again about the 16th and 17th of the league. I saw stuff just watching the highlights. I didn't see Spurs playing. But on the first goal, I felt no anticipation, no feeling whatsoever from the players. They're like robots. They don't know what to do. They don't feel football. And that team with the other one, which are even, well, the same let's say, poor qualities, are in the final of the Europa League. So that's awful. So it does matter. We talked about that last time when we watched Manchester United. I think they shouldn't have qualified against Atleti. And I say it's because they are in the 16, they were 16 in the table, we said they shouldn't be in the final. That's a confirmation of that. They are very bad right now. And how come they are in the final of those two teams, in the final of the Europa League? I don't get it. It says a lot about the new system of the Europa League, that no team from the Champions League goes down to level up the competition.
Okay, Shakra, I wanted to show you what Ruben Amorim had to say after the game. He wasn't happy of where his team are in the league. He said, "It's my fault, I'm responsible. If we cannot change that really fast, we should give our place to different people."
Hey? Give what place exactly we're talking about here?
Would that be his place?
Listen, I get it in one sense. Amorim is trying to take some pressure off his players who are quite clearly underperforming. But the thing is, we've sat here and said it. Both these teams, well, both Spurs and Manchester United's entire seasons hinge on what happens in the Europa League final. Entire seasons. And use that as your excuse, which I totally get. I just feel that between these two teams and between these two managers, the messaging certainly, at the very least, is confusing, if it is not kind of dragging some of your players down in the build-up to, again, one game that makes your entire season. I guess on the one hand, it's good that there are two teams that are struggling as badly as they are for any kind of consistency in the domestic league as they have. So there's very little to take in between them. So there's no real struggle in terms of motivating or convincing your team that you can beat the other. But anything about these two, and I've said this weeks ago, nothing about either of them either surprises me or disappoints me anymore. It comes down to this one game that is going to totally change everybody's seasons and summers, whether you're Manchester United or Spurs. It's really hard to sell to a player that you're coming into a team that's finished 16th or 17th in the Premier League. It's a whole lot easier if you can say to them, we're building for a Champions League campaign. That changes everything, not just about how last season or how this season will be seen, but it's how you go into next season as well. These kinds of comments don't help.
If Manchester United don't win the Europa League final, what should happen to Amorim?
Let's be honest. If somebody was to say there's going to be a manager who's going to take Manchester United and they're going to finish 16th in the league, everybody would say, well, they need to get rid of him. And actually, unless my reading of his statement is somewhat skewed, he's basically saying the same thing. He's saying you need to get rid of him. You know, actions speak louder than words. So resign. If you really mean, because that's what he's saying. He's saying that he shouldn't be there. So guess what? Go and resign. Don't give us all your nonsense. But yeah, if anybody said at the start of the season you're going to bring somebody in and we're going to finish 16th,
but with the caveat that there's going to be a European final in that.
No, not for Man United.
You're not going anywhere.
Not for Man. No, he's not. But I'm just saying, the position. That's how desperate a position Manchester United are in. That for so many reasons they probably should get rid of him. But the main one being they can't afford to. How ridiculous is that? Supposedly the biggest, most famous, supposedly was the richest club on the planet, can't afford to sack a manager who's absolutely taken them down and down and down and down to 16th place in the Premier League. But it won't be. He'll still be there next year, regardless of what
absolutely
happens
will
in
be.
the final.
But the thing is, it kind of highlights Manchester United's own feelings, in my opinion, in that Amorim was not an unknown. It's not somebody they got off by Trafford Mall or wherever people were shopping in Trafford Centre in Manchester. Off the back of beating Manchester City in the Champions League, and he's brought into to Manchester United and hailed as the man to lead them on to former glory days. And it's not worked, quite clearly. It's not worked, certainly not this season. But it just points to the feelings of Manchester United as a football club. The owners aren't selling, sadly, so we have to sit here and discuss Amorim.
FA Cup final coming up very soon next weekend. Crystal Palace against Manchester City, Saturday 10:30 Eastern on ESPN+. Be sure to catch it. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. Deja vu. Here we are again.
All over again.
But we've got Frank with us today.
All right.
We've got Frank with us today.
Actually, party.
It's been a long day. Shaq has been awake for all of it.
Okay.
I don't believe that. I think I'm sure he snuck a little kip in somewhere down
Walking
the
around campus to get his steps in.
Yeah.
Okay. This could be the highest scoring Barcelona squad in the club's history at any point without Messi. Can we say this is one of the club's greatest teams ever assembled? They need 8 goals for a total of 103 in the league. Any thoughts on that, Frank?
That's very good. That's amazing, especially because it wasn't expected. And what Hansi Flick is doing with that young team is amazing, simply amazing. But comparing that team with the team, I think it was around 2010, that's impossible. That team at the time was the greatest of the greatest in Barcelona, with all the players that we can name, with Xavi and some others, Messi and so many others. So yeah, no, it's no comparison for me whatsoever.
Yeah, obviously Pep, Luis Enrique, we've seen what their Barcelona teams were able to do.
Yeah,
Not yet.
the clue's in the question. Team. Barcelona's a great team. Well, an incredibly brilliant team going forward. But as good as they are going forward, they're as bad defensively. Great teams don't have to score 3 and 4 to win games every single time they step on the field. So, as great as they are going forward, they are poor.
Scrap it all, Shaka. Let's go back to when Xavi was in charge and it was 1-0 every week.
No. It's a good team. It's far better than anybody expected. I'm in total agreement with that. When Steve said the clues in the question, I thought he was going to point to when he said, one of the greatest teams. What is one of the greatest? One of the greatest 100 teams that Barcelona's ever assembled? That's a little open-ended. Listen, it's a good team. It's a million times better than I think anybody expected 12 months ago. Give Hansi Flick and this team their credit. Give Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, give them all their credit. But this team is still a long way from that Barca team that Frank referenced.
Mbappe has been caught offside 39 times this season. Thoughts, Stevie?
My thought is that somebody needs to get a hold of him and give him some coaching. You know, you don't run off, say, 39 times in one season if you know what you're doing. So clearly, he's not quite...
Well, it's only once a game.
He's not quite sure what he's doing.
That's very true. That's not a lot. That's not a lot.
Yeah, I think it might even have been you that said it. You know, the great players need to be told once, and then that's it. But clearly, he must have been told 39 times, and he still doesn't get it.
But then that needs a little context in terms of when he first joined, he was offside on
half of those were in that first game against Barca.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's tapered off and he has learned, Steve, then
he hasn't learned. He hasn't learned.
How many times was he offside today?
You're talking about context.
How many times was he offside today? Anybody? Anybody behind the scenes? Anybody? That's an appeal to you all behind there.
To Frank's point, at least once.
That's only once. Yeah. That's only once.
Honestly, you don't. If you're supposed to be arguably one of the best players on the planet, You shouldn't be running offside as many times as he clearly doesn't understand it properly. And nobody is obviously helping him, which I find...
I think he's getting better.
Which I find the hardest thing to understand. But saying that, if you go back to when Enrique was manager of PSG and he was trying to coach him and try to talk to him about, you know, his defensive work and getting back into a decent... I mean, he wasn't asking him to do much. All he was asking him to do was get in a decent position, and he didn't get it. He either didn't get it or he didn't want to do it. And it's the same thing with this. He clearly isn't listening to anybody, and he's going to do his own thing.
Harsh.
It's the truth, though.
Now, I'm assuming the next question is under the assumption that Xabi Alonso is the new Real Madrid manager. Because it says, what positions does Xabi Alonso need to prioritise over summer?
Defensively, and to be fair, a lot of injuries affected Real Madrid at the back. So you have to find that balancing act. Players coming back, they stay fit. Who do you recruit in the summer? The big issue though is trying to figure out that front three or front four, however you want to play. How do you cater to Vinny, Kylian Mbappe, Rodrigo?
Does Rodrigo stay?
That for me is the biggest conundrum. Figure that out, and then but then again in terms of just recruiting, quite clearly also injuries have played their part.
Well, Alexander Arnold's coming. What are you worried about?
Well, actually, that brings us to our next question. Are you ready? If Madrid sensibly bolster their backline, can Trent Alexander-Arnold take up the cross midfield role?
No.
Oh. Are we talking about this again? Trent in the midfield?
The reason Trent is so good is because Trent gets the ball coming from a deep position. That's why Trent's so good from coming from his right back position. Because everybody else is getting picked up or there's movement going on. So he then steps in from the back line into the middle of the park with time and space to get his head up and pick his passes. When you're actually starting in the middle, that's a completely different ball game entirely. That's why he's so good, is because he steps in late and people can't get to him quickly.
You agree with that, Frank?
I totally agree. I mean, if I were a coach, I would have a problem to manage Trent Alexander-Arnold. But definitely, I will put him in the middle of the park. That's for sure. Because I don't want him to defend. He's not capable of doing it. He doesn't got the education for that. And therefore, because of his strengths offensively, I will put him on the right side, but offensively as a real fullback or as a right wing, I would say, as we used to call them, to make sure he can start a little bit backwards from the middle of the park and serve the others. But to solve the Madrid's problem, that's going to be an issue. For me, it's going to be an issue. I'm not sure it's going to be the right recruitment because they need to defend, they need to be good, and they have to prioritize, to go back to the further question, to the previous question, they have to prioritize the front line. Because those three, they will have to start running for the others. They will start defending for the others. Otherwise, they're not going to do anything next year.
Stevie, does Slot have to start Trent Alexander-Arnold against Crystal Palace at Anfield? Or do you think Slot wants to avoid any booing or mixed reactions from the supporters when they lift the trophy?
No, I think you should absolutely start him. You know, at the end of the day, I don't think you should be bringing him off the bench. Don't open yourself up to that situation that happened today happening again. So I would absolutely 100% start him, no question. And I think he will. And I think he will as well, because just to go off Trent Alexander, we were sat here the other day and we were talking about Connor Bradley. Connor Bradley had a horrendous game today. He got a lot of things wrong, particularly on the defensive side, including the second goal where he didn't close the ball properly. So, just to throw that in, you know, we were talking about how, I should say, I was talking about how he has got the tools, because defensively he generally is sound, he's good going forward. I was saying a lot of nice things about him, but he didn't show that today. So, I just thought I'd throw that in.
That's all right. That's what it's all about.
You're very balanced.
Extra
your analysis. My conclusion, Stephen?
Oh,
yeah.
I wondered, I nearly fell off the chair. I wonder what you were talking about.
But he was firm on what he was very upset with the Trent Alexander-Arnold doing in the show, because we did hear Andy Robertson saying he's not going to tell people how to feel. He didn't agree with it, but he said and started with that.
But I think that would be a good idea for Slot, though. Start him in the game and keep him on. And then you avoid either bringing them on or taking them off.
Yeah, but why do you... Yeah, but Stevie, why do you want to avoid...
Well, because it's
clearly
horrible.
See the stupidity of
Do you know?
some,
I'll tell you what, Frank. You know
people.
why? Honestly, you know, I'll tell you the real reason why. Because it affects everybody. I felt bad sitting in the house watching this game when they started booing. I bet you all the players felt bad, and you know that half the crowd felt bad as well. So, as much as a little bit of me says don't avoid anything and just do what you think you should do, don't.
Yeah, but
if you can help avoiding that situation, then do it.
That's the kind of education nowadays we give to our kids, you know. We try to avoid stuff to make sure that they don't see it because they don't want to see the truth of something, you know. And I'm not like that. I want to show what is wrong to maybe for some people readjust their thought. Those stupid people should, you know, readjust and be said by the others, you are stupid, man. That guy served the club. Why are you booing him? Are you such a moron to not see that? I'm very upset with that. I'm very upset because I thought everybody has the brain. Some of them, they're smaller than the others, but at least, loyalty should be the first things you can see on Trent Alexander-Arnold. And that was horrendous what I saw today.
Okay, Shaka, I wonder where this has come from. Stretford End Dreams.
Oh.
Would you prefer finishing 17th with a trophy or finishing second with no silverware?
Oh boy. But it depends on well, one, I guess, where I'm in my career. But if I've never won silverware before, I'll say 17th and a trophy. If I'd won, I'm guessing they're kind of referencing the Europa League here. If I won the Europa League before, then I'd prefer to be second and chasing most of the season.
Second?
Yeah, but
Frank, you can finish it off.
Yeah, the thing is, if I agree with Shaka, if you're not belonging to a big club. If you belong to a club who normally finishes in the middle of the table, at the back of the table, you have a chance to win a trophy, and you have played 10 years for that club, and you win one silverware, finishing 17. I agree with Shaka. But when you are Manchester United, you finish 17 and you win silverware. I don't know. It feels bad. So I'm with Stevie. If I'm a Manchester United player, I prefer. Overall, I prefer finishing second with no silverware.
It does matter who you are. It really does.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, look at West Ham. West Ham fans and West Ham in general were absolutely going crackers at winning the Conference League. Never mind the Europa League. And if my mind serves me right, I think they were about 15th or 16th that year in the league. So it does matter who you are. West Ham couldn't care less about being 15th and 16th. All they talk about was winning the Conference League.
Because they used to be in 15th and 16th.
Aye.
No, that's a very valid point. That's a very valid point. Depends on the club. That's a very valid point. I agree with that.
Oh, we've got time for in the latest edition of Extra Time. We'll be back tomorrow with more.